Hello, and welcome to English Podcast Session. I'm John.
And I'm Amelia. Thanks for joining us today as we dive into an important and timely topic, mental health in a post-pandemic world.
That's right. We'll examine the ongoing effects of the pandemic on mental health, the rise of teletherapy, and share some tips on supporting your well-being.
Plus, don't miss our vocabulary segment to boost your English and a short story to tie it all together at the end. Let's get started.
Amelia, I think we can all agree that the pandemic changed everything. From lockdowns to remote work, our routines were flipped upside down.
Absolutely, John. It wasn't just about physical health. For many, the emotional toll was significant. Feelings of isolation, anxiety, and even grief became common.
Let's talk about why. Humans are social creatures, right? Being cut off from friends and family disrupted our sense of connection.
Exactly. And not to mention the uncertainty. When will it end? Will things ever go back to normal? Those questions created a lot of stress.
Then, there's the economic impact. Job losses and financial insecurity added even more pressure.
So true. It's no surprise mental health issues like depression and anxiety surged during and after the pandemic.
But amidst the challenges, one major shift occurred: teletherapy.
Yes, therapy went digital. People could access mental health support from the comfort of their homes.
And it wasn't just for emergencies. Many found it more convenient than traditional therapy.
Right. It removed barriers like commuting or living in areas without nearby therapists.
What's your take on its effectiveness, Amelia?
Well, research shows teletherapy can be just as effective as in-person therapy for many issues. But it's not perfect. It might not suit everyone.
True. But it's a valuable option, especially for those who might not have sought help otherwise.
So, John, what can people do to support their mental health in this post-pandemic world?
Great question. First, let's talk about routine. Having a daily structure can bring a sense of stability.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of physical activity. It's great for both your body and mind.
Another tip: practice mindfulness or meditation. Even a few minutes a day can help reduce stress.
Also, stay connected. Regular check-ins with friends and family can make a big difference.
And lastly, don't hesitate to seek professional help if needed. It's a sign of strength, not weakness.
Now, let's pause for our vocabulary section. We'll share 5 key terms from today's episode to enhance your English.
Isolation. Meaning, being separated from others. Example: the isolation during the lockdown was difficult for many people. Teletherapy. Meaning, therapy sessions conducted online or over the phone. Example: teletherapy became popular during the pandemic. Resilience. Meaning, the ability to recover from challenges or setbacks. Example: building resilience can help you cope with stress. Mindfulness. Meaning, being present and fully engaged in the moment. Example: mindfulness exercises can reduce anxiety. Grief, deep sorrow, especially caused by loss. Example: she experienced grief after losing a loved one.
Now, back to our discussion. To wrap things up, here's a short story that highlights today's topic. Meet Sarah, a working mom who juggled a full-time job and 2 kids during the pandemic. When lockdowns hit, she felt overwhelmed. Her kids needed homeschooling. Her job went remote, and she barely had time for herself. Over time, Sarah started noticing signs of burnout. She decided to try teletherapy. Her therapist helped her set boundaries, like designating work hours and scheduling me time. She also began practicing mindfulness with her kids, a few minutes of deep breathing every evening. Slowly, she felt more balanced and connected. Sarah's story reminds us that seeking help and making small changes can lead to big improvements in mental health. That's all for today's episode of English Podcast Session.
We hope you learned something valuable about mental health in a post-pandemic world.
Don't forget to share this episode with friends and practice the vocabulary we discussed.
And remember, taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health.
Until next time, stay safe, stay connected, and stay well.
Bye for now. Hello everyone. Welcome back to English podcast session. I'm John, your host for today.
And I'm Amelia. We're so glad to have you with us. Today, we've got a really interesting topic to discuss: how childhood shapes personality, nature versus nurture. It's a classic debate in psychology and something that affects all of us, whether we realize it or not.
That's right, Amelia. It's all about what makes us who we are. Do we inherit our traits from our parents, or is it our environment that shapes us the most?
Exactly. We'll explore how genetics and early experiences both play a role in forming personality traits. And to make sure you get the most out of this episode, we'll also have an intermediate vocabulary break where we explain some key terms. Stick around for that.
So, let's dive in, Amelia. How do you think personality starts to form in childhood?
Great starting point, John. Let's first define personality. It's a combination of patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that make a person unique. These traits influence how we interact with the world and others.
Right, and when we talk about personality traits, we're talking about things like extroversion, conscientiousness, and agreeableness, things that we often notice in ourselves and others, even from a young age.
Exactly. And the question becomes, where do these traits come from? Are we born with them, or do they develop because of our experiences?
I've always wondered about that myself. Some people seem naturally shy, while others are outgoing. Can these differences really be explained by something as simple as DNA?
That's the question we're tackling today. Let's start by looking at the nature side of things.
Okay, so nature refers to the genetic factors that influence our personality. We're talking about the traits we inherit from our parents. Studies show that genetics can account for a significant portion of personality development.
Right. For example, researchers have found that twins raised apart can have very similar personalities, even when they grew up in completely different environments. That suggests that something in our genetic makeup is driving how we behave.
That's fascinating. So, if you have an outgoing parent, there's a higher chance you might inherit those extroverted traits.
Yes, and that's the argument for the nature side of the debate. Certain traits, like being more anxious or more empathetic, can run in families, meaning our genetics play a big part.
So, does that mean our personality is all determined by our DNA from the start?
Not quite. Let's not forget about nurture, John. While genetics set the stage, our experiences really bring those traits to life.
Ah, yes, nurture. So, this is the environment, the people, places, and experiences that help shape our personality over time.
Exactly. From the way our parents raise us to the friends we make in school, these external factors influence our emotional responses, our behavior, and how we see the world.
So, if someone grows up in a loving, supportive environment, they might develop a sense of security and confidence. But if they face adversity or neglect, it might lead to issues with self-esteem or trust.
Right. And I think one of the most important things is that, unlike nature, our environment is something we can change and influence. A positive environment can help someone with genetic predispositions to anxiety, for example, manage those feelings better.
It's so interesting how something as simple as a parent's approach to discipline can impact a child's personality. A child who feels secure and valued is more likely to be confident and develop a strong sense of self-worth.
On the other hand, children who face emotional neglect or even constant criticism might struggle with self-doubt. It's amazing how these early years can have such long-lasting effects.
Now, we come to the most interesting part: how nature and nurture work together to shape us. It's not just a matter of one or the other. It's both.
Yes, and this is the nature vs. nurture debate in action. Nature might give us certain tendencies, but how those tendencies develop depends largely on our environment.
Exactly. Think about it, a child might have a genetic predisposition for high intelligence. But if that child doesn't have access to good education or stimulating experiences, those genetic potentials might never fully develop.
And on the flip side, a child might have some genetic traits that make them shy. But if they grow up in an environment that encourages social interaction like an active school or community, they might learn to overcome their natural shyness.
It's like planting a seed in different types of soil. No matter the genetics, the environment plays a huge role in how that seed grows.
Exactly. And this balance between nature and nurture helps explain why siblings from the same family can still end up with very different personalities.
All right, time for our vocabulary break. Let's look at some important terms we've mentioned so far.
First up, we have genetics. This refers to the biological information we inherit from our parents, which influences traits like eye color, height, and even personality. For example, his love for music is in his genetics. His mother was a professional violinist. Next is environment. This includes all the external factors that influence a person's development, things like family, friends, school, and even cultural influences. For instance, her environment growing up was filled with books and travel, so she became very curious about the world. Then we have trait. This is a characteristic that defines someone's behavior or personality. For example, patience is a trait that helps him deal with stressful situations. And finally, nurture. This refers to how we are raised and influenced by our experiences. For instance, good nurture can help a child develop confidence and resilience.
Great! Now that you're familiar with these terms, let's get back to our discussion.
So far, we've discussed genetics and environment separately, but what about the early experiences we have in life? How do they influence personality?
It's so important. Childhood is the critical period when most of our personality traits are formed. Our brains are highly flexible and impressionable at that age.
For example, children who are consistently praised for effort and progress tend to develop a growth mindset. They start to believe that their abilities can improve with hard work.
And children who are given a lot of love and care are more likely to grow up emotionally secure. But if a child experiences neglect or abuse, it can have lasting impacts on their self-esteem and emotional regulation.
That's true. Early experiences form the foundation for emotional health later in life. It's why childhood trauma can sometimes lead to difficulties with mental health in adulthood.
But it's also empowering to know that positive experiences like supportive friends, mentors, and encouraging teachers can change the trajectory for someone who has had a difficult childhood. To bring all of this together, let's share a short story. It's about two children, Lucas and Emma, who grew up in different circumstances. Lucas came from a stable family with lots of encouragement. Emma, on the other hand, faced a lot of challenges and adversity in her early years. Lucas was a natural leader, confident and outgoing from a young age. He excelled in school, always encouraged by his parents. But Emma was more reserved and struggled with her studies. Despite this, her teachers noticed her creative potential and encouraged her to take up art. Over time, Emma's love for painting helped her build confidence and discover new aspects of her personality. She learned to trust herself more, even though her childhood environment had been tough. It just shows how both nature and nurture work together. Lucas had the genetic predispositions for leadership, but his environment helped him thrive. Emma, despite her challenges, found a way to flourish because of the positive experiences she had later on.
Exactly. Our early experiences don't have to define us. They help shape who we become, but we can always grow and evolve.
So, in conclusion, our personalities are shaped by a combination of genetics and the environment we grow up in. Neither one is the sole determining factor.
Yes, and the good news is that with positive influences, we can continue to develop and grow throughout our lives.
Thanks for joining us today on English Podcast Session. We hope this episode has given you some insight into how childhood shapes personality.
Until next time, stay curious and keep learning. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.
Welcome back, everyone, to English Podcast Session. I'm Amelia.
And I'm James. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're diving into the classic debate, Type A versus Type B personality. Are they really that different?
We'll explore common stereotypes around each personality type and discuss how they each handle stress and success.
And of course, we'll throw in some vocabulary to help you expand your English skills, so stay tuned.
So let's kick things off with some definitions. Type A and Type B personalities come from studies in the 1950s by two cardiologists, Friedman and Rosenman.
That's right. They suggested that people with a Type A personality are often competitive, driven, and more prone to stress.
Exactly. Type As are often described as ambitious and organized. They like things planned out and have a strong sense of urgency.
On the other hand, Type B personalities are often seen as more relaxed, laid back, and even-tempered.
Right. They're usually less stressed about deadlines, more flexible, and tend to go with the flow.
So, Amelia, what are some stereotypes you've heard about Type A personalities?
Oh, definitely the workaholic label. People often think of Type as constantly working, never taking breaks.
I've heard that too, and they're often seen as aggressive or overly competitive.
Exactly. For Type BS, the stereotype is almost the opposite. They're seen as lazy or unmotivated just because they're more relaxed.
Yes, but those are stereotypes, right? In reality, someone can be hardworking and dedicated, even if they're Type B.
Totally. And a Type A person can be driven without being aggressive.
Let's talk about stress. How do Type A and Type B personalities handle it?
Well, Type S tend to experience stress more intensely. Since they're goal-oriented, they can get frustrated when things don't go as planned.
Yes, and they often create self-imposed deadlines or challenges, which can add to their stress.
But on the flip side, that drive can also push them to achieve big things. Type Bs, though, handle stress differently.
True. They're less likely to get worked up and may even take a wait-and-see approach.
Yes, Type Bs often step back, assess the situation, and don't let stress overwhelm them as much.
Vocabulary break. All right, let's take a quick vocabulary break. I'll share some key words related to our topic today. Ambitious, meaning having a strong desire for success or achievement. Example, she's very ambitious and works hard to reach her career goals. Laid back, meaning relaxed and easygoing. Example, his laid-back attitude helps him stay calm in stressful situations. Workaholic, meaning someone who works excessively. Example, being a workaholic, he spends most of his weekends in the office. Self-imposed, meaning set by oneself, especially in terms of rules or restrictions. Example, she often sets self-imposed deadlines to stay productive. Even-tempered, meaning calm and not easily upset. Example, even in tense meetings, he remains even-tempered and composed.
Now, when it comes to success, Type A and Type B also have different approaches, don't they?
Definitely. Type A individuals often set high goals and push hard to meet them. They can be very goal-oriented and action-driven.
Yes, they often excel in competitive environments, like sales or finance, where quick decision-making is valued.
But, interestingly, Type Bs also find success, they just go about it differently. They might excel in fields that require patience, like art or counseling.
Exactly. Type Bs might take a slower, more reflective approach, but can be equally successful by focusing on long-term goals.
I think it's fair to say that success looks different for each type, but both approaches have their strengths.
Agreed. It's about using your personality strengths in the right way.
So, here's a big question, Amelia. Can someone change their personality type?
That's a great question, James. Some studies suggest that personality is relatively stable, but people can learn behaviors from the other type.
Exactly. A type B can adopt some type of habits, like setting specific goals or deadlines.
And type S can practice mindfulness or relaxation techniques to adopt a more laid-back approach when needed.
So, while your core personality may stay the same, you can learn and adapt traits from both types.
It's all about balance. Embracing the strengths of both type A and type B can help anyone succeed in different areas of life. Let's wrap this up with a short story. Imagine two friends, Sam and Alex, who are planning a road trip. Sam is a classic type A. He's already mapped out the entire route, made hotel reservations, and planned every stop along the way. Meanwhile, Alex, a type B, is excited but relaxed. He's ready to go with the flow, willing to explore wherever the road takes them. During the trip, they encounter some unexpected road closures. Sam gets frustrated at first because his plan isn't going perfectly. But Alex stays calm and suggests they try a different route. Eventually, Sam takes a deep breath and agrees to explore some new sites. In the end, they both enjoy the trip because they combined Sam's planning with Alex's flexibility. They found a balance between their two styles. Exactly. It's a great example of how both type A and type B qualities can work together for a positive outcome. Thanks for listening to this episode of English Podcast Session. Remember, whether you're type A, you, type B, or somewhere in between, each personality has its own strengths. We hope this episode helped you understand these personality types a little better. And don't forget to use those new vocabulary words. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe for more episodes. And share your thoughts with us on social media. We'd love to hear what personality type you think you are.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Podcast Session. I'm John, and as always, I'm here with the lovely Amelia.
Hey, everyone! Thanks for tuning in. Today, we've got a fascinating topic that so many people can relate to: introverts versus extroverts.
We'll be exploring the science behind these personality traits, busting some myths, and talking about how they impact our relationships, careers, and self-esteem.
Plus, we'll have an important vocabulary section and end with a short story to wrap it all up. Ready to dive in, John?
Always ready, Amelia. Let's get started. What are introverts and extroverts?
All right, so let's begin with the basics. John, how do you define introverts and extroverts?
Good question. Introverts are people who tend to feel more energized when they spend time alone or in smaller, quieter settings. Extroverts, on the other hand, thrive in social situations and often feel recharged by being around others.
Exactly. And it's important to note that introversion and extroversion exist on a spectrum. Most people aren't 100% one or the other.
Right. Some are ambiverts, kind of a mix of both. For example, I'm mostly extroverted, but I still need my quiet moments. What about you, Amelia?
I'd say I'm more on the introverted side. I enjoy socializing, but I recharge best when I'm alone with a good book or my thoughts.
The classic introvert move, curling up with a book.
Guilty as charged. But let's not forget, being introverted doesn't mean you're shy or antisocial.
Exactly. And being extroverted doesn't mean you're loud or overbearing. These are common misconceptions we'll tackle later. Strengths of introverts and extroverts.
Let's talk about strengths. What's one strength you think introverts bring to the table, John?
I'd say introspection. Introverts are often deep thinkers. They tend to analyze situations thoroughly before acting.
Great point. And extroverts?
Extroverts are fantastic at networking. They're usually great at forming connections and energizing groups.
Absolutely. Introverts also excel at listening. They're often the ones who pick up on details others might miss.
And extroverts? They're natural communicators. They can inspire and motivate teams with their enthusiasm.
So both personality types bring unique strengths, and when they work together, it's magic.
That's why diversity in personality types is so valuable, whether in friendships, families, or workplaces.
Myths and misunderstandings.
Now, let's bust some myths. Here's a big one: introverts are always shy.
Not true at all. Some introverts are very confident, they just prefer smaller settings.
Exactly. And how about this myth: extroverts don't like being alone?
False. Extroverts can enjoy alone time. They just recharge differently than introverts.
Another myth: introverts can't be leaders.
Totally wrong. Some of the most influential leaders, like Gandhi or Bill Gates, were introverted.
And let's not forget extroverts. Some people assume they're all superficial.
Also false. Extroverts can be just as deep and reflective as introverts. All right, before we move on, it's time for our vocabulary break.
Let's learn some useful words and phrases related to today's topic.
First word, introspective. It means tending to examine one's own thoughts and feelings.
For example, introverts are often introspective, spending time reflecting on their emotions.
Next, we have energize, which means to give someone energy or enthusiasm.
Example: extroverts are energized by being around people.
Here's another one, misconception. It means a view or opinion that is incorrect because it's based on faulty thinking.
Example: it's a misconception that introverts are always shy.
And lastly, networking. This means interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts.
Example: extroverts often excel at networking events. Amelia, how do you think these traits affect relationships?
Well, in relationships, understanding each other's personality can make a big difference. For example, an introvert might need more downtime, while an extrovert might want more social activities.
So true. And in careers, introverts often excel in roles that require focus and independent thinking, like writing or research.
Meanwhile, extroverts shine in roles involving teamwork or public speaking, like sales or teaching.
It's all about playing to your strengths and finding balance.
And communicating with others about what you need, whether it's more quiet time or more collaboration.
All right, as we wrap up, let's share a short story that ties everything together.
Sure. Here's a quick one. There were two colleagues, Emma, an introvert, and Max, an extrovert. Emma loved working alone and was great at finding creative solutions, while Max thrived on brainstorming sessions with the team. They didn't always see eye to eye, but one day they were assigned a project together. Emma handled the research and planning, and Max took charge of presenting their ideas.
Their boss was so impressed by how they balanced each other's strengths that they ended up getting a promotion together.
What a great example of how introverts and extroverts can complement each other.
Absolutely. It's all about celebrating our differences and learning from each other.
And that's a wrap for today's English podcast session.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to English Podcast Session. I'm James.
And I'm Amelia. We're so glad you could join us today.
Today's topic is one that affects us all, whether we realize it or not: how personality traits affect mental health.
We'll explore how different traits can make people more resilient or more susceptible to anxiety and stress.
And, as always, we'll have our vocabulary section later on. Plus, stick around for a short story that wraps up our topic. Amelia, let's start with the basics. We all have unique personalities, right?
Exactly, James. Psychologists often use the big 5 personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
That's right. Let's take neuroticism, for instance. People high in neuroticism often experience more emotional instability.
Which means they're more prone to anxiety and depression. Neurotic individuals may overthink or worry excessively about everyday issues.
So someone with high neuroticism might need to develop specific coping strategies.
Yes, practicing mindfulness or therapy can help. But what about extroversion?
Good point. Extroverts are usually outgoing and energized by social interaction.
They often have a support network that can act as a buffer against stress.
But it's not all positive. Extroverts can also struggle if they feel isolated.
On the flip side, introverts may enjoy solitude but need to ensure they're not becoming socially withdrawn.
True, it's a balancing act for both types. Now, what about openness?
Openness is about creativity and curiosity. People high in openness often adapt well to change.
And that adaptability can be protective for mental health. However, they may be more vulnerable to feeling overwhelmed if they have too many interests.
That's why setting priorities is key for people high in openness.
What's your take on conscientiousness?
Conscientious people are organized and disciplined. They're often good at sticking to healthy habits.
But if they become too rigid, it can lead to stress, especially if things don't go as planned.
So, flexibility is important. And lastly, there's agreeableness.
People who are highly agreeable are empathetic and cooperative.
Yes, they often have strong relationships. But they can feel significant stress if they're always putting others' needs before their own.
So, setting boundaries is essential.
Right. Now, how do these traits affect building healthy habits for mental health?
Great question. People high in conscientiousness might find it easier to stick to routines, like regular exercise.
While those high in neuroticism might benefit from activities that reduce anxiety, such as yoga or journaling.
And remember, self-awareness is key. By understanding your personality, you can tailor strategies to fit your needs.
Absolutely. Shall we pause for our vocabulary section?
Good idea. Let's take a short break. Welcome to our vocabulary section. We'll explain a few words that are useful when discussing personality and mental health. Resilience. Resilience means the ability to recover from difficulties or setbacks. For example, practicing resilience helps you handle life's challenges more effectively. Vulnerability. Vulnerability is the quality of being easily hurt or affected. Like, showing vulnerability can be a strength in building genuine relationships. Susceptibility. It refers to how likely someone is to be affected by something. Example, high susceptibility to stress can impact overall health. Neuroticism. It's one of the big 5 traits describing someone prone to negative emotions, such as people with high neuroticism may feel anxious more frequently. Amelia, let's talk about strategies to improve mental health based on personality.
Sure. One common approach is tailoring self-care to your personality type.
For instance, if you're high in openness, exploring new hobbies can be therapeutic.
And if you're conscientious, creating a detailed schedule for your self-care activities might work best.
On the other hand, introverts may benefit from quiet solo activities like reading or meditation.
While extroverts could prioritize social activities like group sports or community events.
And for highly neurotic individuals, daily relaxation exercises can be crucial.
The key is to know yourself and experiment with different strategies.
And always seek professional help if you're struggling. Therapy can be life-changing.
Absolutely. Now, as promised, we'll end with a short story to illustrate our topic.
Let's dive into it.
Once upon a time, there were 2 friends, Emily and Daniel. Emily was highly conscientious, while Daniel was more spontaneous and high in openness. Emily loved planning every detail of her day. It kept her stress levels low, but if things didn't go as planned, she would feel anxious. Daniel, on the other hand, enjoyed going with the flow, but he sometimes struggled to complete projects on time. One day, they decided to climb a mountain. Emily had prepared every detail: food, weather forecasts, and a detailed map. Daniel, however, packed last minute and brought along art supplies, planning to paint at the top. Halfway up, it started raining, and Emily's anxiety spiked. Her plans had gone awry. Daniel, though surprised, encouraged her to be flexible and try painting in the rain. Reluctantly, Emily joined him. She found that letting go of her rigid plans helped her feel calmer. Meanwhile, Daniel learned the value of Emily's planning, realizing it made the climb safer. Together, they discovered that understanding and blending their personalities could lead to a richer experience. The moral? Self-awareness and balance can make a huge difference in managing stress. And that's all for today's English podcast session.
We hope you found this topic insightful. Remember, mental health is a journey, and understanding yourself is the first step.
Don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and join us next time for more engaging discussions.
Thanks for listening, and take care. Bye for now.
Welcome back to English podcast session. I'm John.
And I'm Amelia. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects so many of us: perfectionism. The idea that we need to be flawless at all times.
Perfectionism is something we've all encountered either in ourselves or in others. It can drive us to achieve great things, but it can also hold us back and cause unnecessary stress. So, today's question is, when is perfectionism helpful, and when is it harmful?
Let's start by defining what perfectionism really is. It's a personality trait where someone sets very high standards for themselves and strives to meet them, sometimes to an extreme.
Exactly. And it's not all bad. For example, perfectionism can motivate people to work hard, aim high, and achieve excellence. But there's a fine line between being driven and being overly critical of yourself.
Right. And often, perfectionism comes from a deeper place sometimes. It's rooted in childhood or from societal pressure. We'll get into that shortly, but first, John, how would you describe your relationship with perfectionism?
Oh, good question. I think I've always had a bit of a perfectionist streak. I want everything to be just right. But I've learned over the years that chasing perfection can sometimes stop me from even starting something. What about you?
Same here. I've definitely struggled with it, especially in my career. I remember rewriting a project presentation over and over again, just to make it perfect. In the end, it was good, but was the extra stress really worth it?
That's a great example. Sometimes, perfectionism pushes us into analysis paralysis, spending so much time fine-tuning that we never finish.
And that's when perfectionism becomes harmful. It can lead to procrastination, burnout, and even mental health issues like anxiety and depression.
To better understand this, let's break it down. First, let's look at when perfectionism is helpful. Amelia, what do you think?
Well, it's helpful when it drives us to improve. Think about athletes, artists, or scientists. Their pursuit of excellence often comes from setting high standards. That's a healthy form of perfectionism.
True. Like when a student studies hard because they want to do their best on an exam, not because they're afraid of failure, but because they genuinely value the effort.
Exactly. And perfectionism can also help with attention to detail. Think about surgeons or engineers. Their work needs to be precise.
But on the flip side, perfectionism can become harmful when it's tied to our self-worth. For example, when we think, if I'm not perfect, I'm a failure.
Yes, or when it stops us from taking risks because we're afraid of making mistakes. That fear can keep us from growing or trying new things.
And that's when perfectionism becomes destructive. So, how do we find balance? How can we keep the positive aspects of perfectionism without letting it control us?
Great question. I think one key is self-awareness, recognizing when our perfectionism is helpful and when it's not. For example, asking yourself, am I being productive, or am I just stuck in a loop of overthinking?
Another way is to focus on progress, not perfection. It's better to aim for good enough than to let the fear of imperfection stop you.
Absolutely. And let's not forget self-compassion. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes are how we learn.
Before we go further, let's take a quick vocabulary break. If you're learning English, this is a great time to expand your vocabulary related to today's topic. Welcome to our vocabulary section. Let's go over some important words and phrases related to perfectionism.
First up, strive. It means to try very hard to achieve something. For example, she strives for excellence in everything she does.
Next, self-worth. This refers to how you value yourself. Example, his self-worth shouldn't depend on his work performance.
Another one, burnout. This is a state of physical and emotional exhaustion caused by overwork. For instance, he experienced burnout after months of working long hours.
Analysis paralysis. A phrase that describes overthinking to the point where you can't make a decision. Example, she faced analysis paralysis when choosing a university.
And finally, self-compassion. Being kind to yourself, especially when you make mistakes. Example, practicing self-compassion can help reduce stress.
Practice using these words in sentences to make them part of your vocabulary. Now, back to our main discussion. Thanks, Amelia. That was a helpful break. Now, let's talk about how to approach perfectionism in a healthy way. One tip is to set realistic goals.
Yes, like breaking down big tasks into smaller, manageable steps. That makes goals feel achievable instead of overwhelming.
Another tip is to celebrate progress, even small wins. Perfectionists often focus on what they didn't do, instead of recognizing what they did accomplish.
And remember, feedback is your friend. Instead of fearing criticism, see it as an opportunity to grow.
That's so important. Nobody's perfect, and perfection isn't the goal. Growth is.
Speaking of growth, let's end today's episode with a short story that highlights this idea.
There once was a potter named Sarah who loved making pottery. She spent hours on each vase, making sure every curve was perfect. But no matter how hard she tried, she always found a tiny flaw. One day, Sarah's mentor told her, perfection is an illusion. True beauty lies in the imperfections. Inspired, Sarah created a vase with a deliberate crack running through it. She filled the crack with gold paint, transforming it into a unique masterpiece. That's when Sarah realized, imperfections tell a story. They make us human. And sometimes, what we see as flaws are actually what makes something or someone truly special.
What a great reminder! Progress over perfection. And that's a wrap for today's episode of English Podcast Session.
We hope you found this discussion helpful. Remember, you don't need to be perfect to be amazing. Thanks for listening.
Subscribe and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you next time!
Welcome back to the English Podcast Session. I'm John, and I'm here with my co-host Amelia.
Hey, everyone! Today, we're diving into a topic that's super relevant in our digital age, the impact of social media on our minds and lives. We'll explore how it affects our mental health, focus, and relationships. Is social media really rewiring our minds and lives?
Social media platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok have become a huge part of our daily routines, but we're starting to see how they might be changing us in ways we didn't expect. From affecting mental health to shortening attention spans, social media is impacting more than just how we communicate. Let's kick things off with mental health. Amelia, what do you think social media does to our mental health?
Great question, John. Many studies show that too much social media can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and even loneliness. People often compare themselves to others online, which can hurt their self-esteem.
Exactly. When you're scrolling through perfect vacation photos or seeing people's highlights, you might feel like your own life doesn't measure up.
Yes, and it's easy to forget that people usually post only their best moments. We rarely see the struggles or the less Instagram-worthy parts of their lives.
Right. It creates this illusion that everyone else is living a perfect life, and that illusion can be damaging. So, Amelia, what about social media and our ability to focus?
I'd say social media has definitely impacted our attention spans. Think about how quick everything is now: short videos, quick updates, constant notifications.
Exactly. We're constantly switching from one thing to another, and it's rewiring our brains to expect quick stimulation. This can make it harder to focus on things for long periods, like reading a book or even having a deep conversation.
And ironically, that makes us feel more stressed. When we're constantly jumping from one thing to the next, our minds don't have time to relax.
Absolutely. And I think social media can also influence our relationships. Don't you think?
Oh, for sure. Social media can bring us closer to people far away, but it can also make us feel disconnected from people right next to us.
Right. How many times have we seen people sitting together but staring at their phones instead of actually talking?
Exactly. Sometimes we're so focused on sharing moments online that we miss the real experience of actually being present.
So true. And, honestly, social media shapes our perceptions of reality too. We're influenced by what we see, whether it's news, trends, or even what's considered beautiful or successful.
Yes, and that can really limit our own creativity and ideas. We're constantly influenced by what others are posting or doing.
Alright, let's take a quick break for today's vocabulary. We have 5 words that relate to our topic.
Attention span, meaning the amount of time you can focus on a task without getting distracted. Example: her attention span is very short when she's on her phone. She can only concentrate on studying for about 10 minutes. Self-esteem, meaning the level of confidence and value a person has in themselves. Example: spending too much time on social media hurt his self-esteem because he kept comparing himself to others. Stimulation, meaning something that excites or activates the mind, making it more alert or interested. Example: social media offers constant stimulation with new posts, videos, and updates, which makes it hard to put your phone down. Disconnection, meaning a lack of connection or closeness, often leading to feeling detached from others. Example: although social media connects people globally, it can create disconnection among people in the same room. Perception, meaning the way a person sees or understands something, often shaped by outside influences. Example: social media can change people's perception of beauty, success, and happiness, making them believe certain images are reality.
Make sure to try using these words in your conversations or writing to reinforce your vocabulary.
All right, back to our discussion. Let's talk about how we might use social media in a healthier way. One idea is to set limits, like only spending a certain amount of time on social media each day. Some people even take social media breaks for a few days or weeks.
Yes, and maybe turning off notifications, so you're not constantly interrupted.
Exactly. Another tip is to be more mindful. Ask yourself, why am I on social media right now? If it's out of boredom, maybe you could do something more fulfilling instead.
And be careful about who you follow. Following people who inspire you, rather than make you feel bad, can make a big difference.
Good point. At the end of the day, social media isn't going anywhere. So we need to find ways to use it in a way that enhances our lives, not harms them. To wrap up, here's a short story. Imagine a young woman named Sarah. She loves social media, but she finds herself constantly comparing her life to others online. She feels anxious and disconnected from her friends and family, even when they're sitting right next to her. One day, Sarah decides to take a break from social media. She deletes the apps for a week. During that time, she reconnects with friends, spends more time reading, and even takes up a new hobby. She realizes that life doesn't have to be shared online to be fulfilling. And when she finally returns to social media, she's more mindful about how she uses it. She only follows accounts that bring her joy and inspiration, and she limits her time online. For Sarah, it's all about balance. A great reminder that social media is a tool, not a way of life. It's up to us how we let it influence us.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on English Podcast Session. We hope you found today's discussion helpful.
And don't forget to use our vocabulary words. See you next time, everyone.
Take care and stay mindful online.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of English Podcast Session.
Hi, listeners. It's so great to have you here with us today. I'm Amelia, and as always, I'm joined by my amazing co-host, John.
Thanks, Amelia. You're too kind. So, everyone, we have an exciting topic for you today, one that can genuinely improve your life if you master it.
That's right. We're talking about the power of saying no.
You know, Amelia, saying no is one of those things that sounds simple but is incredibly hard for most of us to do.
Absolutely. A lot of us say yes to things we don't want to do just to avoid conflict or guilt. But in the long run, it can leave us feeling exhausted and overwhelmed.
So today, we're going to explore why saying no is so powerful, why it's hard, and most importantly, how you can do it in a way that's respectful and effective.
And don't forget, we'll also have our intermediate vocabulary section, where we'll break down some keywords and phrases related to today's topic.
Plus, we'll end with a short story that shows the impact of saying no in action. So stick around.
All right, let's get into it.
Section 1. Why is saying no so powerful? So, Amelia, let's start with the big question. Why is saying no so important?
Great question, John. Saying no is all about protecting your time, energy, and mental health. Every time you say yes to something you don't want or need to do, you're essentially saying no to something else, something that might be more important to you.
Exactly. Think about it this way: your time and energy are limited resources. If you're constantly giving them away to things that don't align with your goals, you're going to feel drained.
That's so true. And here's something interesting: saying no isn't just about protecting yourself. It's also about being honest with others.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you agree to something you don't actually want to do, you might not give it your best effort. That can lead to resentment or disappointment, both for you and the other person.
Ah, I see what you mean. So, in a way, saying no can actually improve your relationships by setting clear expectations.
Exactly. And it helps you focus on what truly matters. Whether it's your career, family, or personal growth, saying no to distractions allows you to say yes to your priorities.
That's a powerful perspective. You know, Amelia, I used to think saying no was selfish. But now I realize it's more about self-respect and clarity.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who feels guilty about saying no, just remember you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's such a good point. Listeners, take a moment to reflect. When was the last time you said yes to something you regretted?
Oh, I've been there. Saying yes to things like extra projects at work or social events I wasn't excited about.
Same here. It's a common struggle. But the good news is, you can learn to say no, and we'll show you how. Section 2. Why is saying no so hard?
Before we dive into how to say no effectively, let's talk about why it's so difficult in the first place.
Good idea. I think one big reason is fear. People are afraid of rejection, conflict, or disappointing others.
Definitely. We're often taught that saying yes makes us likable or helpful, while saying no can seem cold or unkind.
That's true. And there's also social pressure. Sometimes we say yes because we want to fit in or avoid being seen as difficult.
And let's not forget guilt. It's hard to say no when you feel like you're letting someone down.
Right. But here's the thing: saying yes when you mean no doesn't actually help anyone. It can lead to stress, burnout, and even damaged relationships in the long run.
Exactly. And learning to say no is a form of emotional intelligence. It's about understanding your limits and communicating them effectively.
So true. And now, let's move on to some practical strategies for saying no politely and confidently. Section 3: Tips for saying no politely and effectively.
All right, let's break this down. How do you say no without feeling awkward or rude?
The first tip is to be clear and direct. For example, instead of saying, "maybe later," you can say, "I'm sorry, I can't do that right now."
That's a good one. Ambiguity can lead to misunderstandings, so it's better to be upfront.
Another tip is to express gratitude before declining. For instance, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I'm not available."
Oh, I love that. It softens the rejection and shows appreciation.
Here's another: offer an alternative if it's appropriate. For example, "I can't help with this, but maybe someone else on the team can."
That's really thoughtful. And if you're not sure how to respond, you can always ask for time to think. Say something like, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you."
That's so useful. It takes the pressure off and gives you time to make a decision.
And for those who feel really uncomfortable saying no, try practicing with small things, like turning down an invitation to a casual event or declining an extra helping of dessert.
That's a great idea. It's like building a muscle: the more you practice, the stronger you get.
Exactly. And remember, you don't owe anyone an elaborate explanation. A simple, "I can't commit to this right now," is enough.
Perfect. Let's take a short break for our vocabulary section and then dive back in with more insights.
Welcome to our vocabulary break. Let's explore some keywords and phrases related to today's topic.
These are great for improving your English and understanding the concept of saying no.
The first word is boundaries. Boundaries are limits you set to protect your time, energy, or emotions.
Example: "I had to set boundaries with my coworkers to avoid working late every day."
The next word is overcommit. This means taking on more responsibilities than you can handle.
Example: "I overcommitted by agreeing to 3 meetings in one afternoon."
Another useful phrase is turn down. It means to refuse or decline something.
Example: "I had to turn down the job offer because it didn't align with my career goals."
And finally, we have prioritize. This means to decide what is most important.
Example: "I need to prioritize my health, so I've started saying no to late-night work."
Those are your vocabulary words for today. Try using them in your own conversations or writing.
Now, let's get back to the show.
To wrap up, we'd like to share a short story that illustrates the power of saying no.
This is about a woman named Maya, a graphic designer who was struggling with burnout.
Maya was a people pleaser. She couldn't say no to her clients, friends, or even random requests from acquaintances.
Her calendar was always full, and she barely had time for herself. One weekend, she missed her niece's birthday because she was stuck finishing an extra project she'd agreed to.
That was a wake-up call for Maya. She realized she needed to make a change.
So, the next time a client asked for a last-minute revision, Maya politely said, "I'd love to help, but I'm fully booked right now. Can we schedule this for next week?"
To her surprise, the client was understanding.
That small no gave Maya the confidence to set clearer boundaries in other areas of her life.
Over time, Maya learned to protect her time and focus on what truly mattered: her family, her health, and her personal goals.
The takeaway here? Saying no isn't about shutting people out. It's about making room for the things that truly matter to you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode.
Thanks for tuning in to English Podcast Session. We hope this episode inspires you to embrace the power of saying no.
Don't forget to practice the tips and vocabulary we shared. And remember, saying no can be a form of self-care.
As always, keep improving your English and your life.
Until next time, bye.
Hi everyone, welcome to English podcast session. I'm John.
And I'm Amelia. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and sometimes controversial topic: AI friends and virtual influencers. Can digital relationships really be as meaningful as real ones?
That's a big question, Amelia. We'll explore the rise of virtual influencers, AI companions, and how they're shaping our lives. And stick around because we'll also have a vocabulary section to help you understand key terms and phrases.
Plus, we'll wrap up with a short story to bring everything together. Let's get started.
Section 1. What are AI friends and virtual influencers? So, Amelia, what exactly are AI friends and virtual influencers?
Good question, John. AI friends are digital companions powered by artificial intelligence. They're designed to have conversations, offer support, and sometimes even entertain you.
Like chatbots, but more personal?
Exactly. They learn your preferences, adapt to your personality, and can mimic human-like behavior. And then there are virtual influencers, computer-generated characters who have a presence on social media. They promote products, share opinions, and engage with followers.
Right, like Lil Miquela. She's one of the most famous virtual influencers with millions of followers on Instagram.
Yes. But here's the thing, these relationships and interactions aren't with real people. That's where the debate begins. Are they meaningful or just artificial?
That's something we'll dive into shortly. But first, let's talk about their rise. Section 2. Why are AI friends and virtual influencers popular?
So, John, why do you think people are turning to AI companions and virtual influencers?
Well, for one, they're always available. They don't have bad days, they don't judge, and they're tailored to you.
Absolutely. And during the pandemic, when people felt isolated, AI friends became a source of comfort for many.
True. Virtual influencers also appeal to brands. They're completely controllable, they don't have scandals, and they can represent a perfect image of a company.
Right. But does this perfection make them relatable? That's one of the criticisms, isn't it?
Definitely. Critics argue that virtual influencers lack authenticity. And for AI friends, some people say they're just filling a gap where human connection should be.
That's the heart of the debate. Are we enhancing our lives or avoiding real relationships? Let's take a quick break to talk about some key vocabulary.
Okay, it's time for our vocabulary break. Here are some important words and phrases from today's topic.
First up, artificial intelligence, AI. This refers to computer systems designed to perform tasks that usually require human intelligence, like learning, decision-making, and problem-solving.
For example, AI is used in chatbots to provide customer service.
Next, we have virtual influencer. This is a digitally created character that acts like a social media personality.
Example, the virtual influencer promoted a new clothing line on Instagram.
Another term, companion. A companion is someone, or in this case, something that provides friendship or support.
Example, she uses an AI companion to chat when she feels lonely.
Finally, authenticity. This means being genuine or real.
Example, people question the authenticity of virtual influencers because they are not real.
Keep these words in mind as we continue.
Section 3. The impact on human connection.
So, John, let's get personal. Do you think digital relationships can replace real ones?
I think they're a supplement, not a replacement. For people who are isolated or shy, AI friends can help. But nothing beats a real human connection.
I agree. There's something irreplaceable about human emotions and body language. But for some, digital relationships feel safer. There's no fear of rejection or judgment.
That's true. But relying too much on AI friends might make it harder to build real relationships. It's a double-edged sword.
And what about virtual influencers? Do you think they're harmful or harmless?
I think it depends on how they're used. If people are aware they're not real, it's fine. But if young people start comparing themselves to these perfect characters, it could harm self-esteem.
That's a valid point. It's important to maintain a balance and remember what's real and what's not.
Section 4. A short story to reflect. Now to wrap up, we have a short story. Amelia, take it away.
Sure. Here's a little story to think about. Leela was a busy professional with little time for socializing. She downloaded an AI companion named Theo. Theo was everything she needed: attentive, funny, and always available. Over time, Leela found herself confiding in Theo more than her real friends. One day, she ran into an old college friend, Mia, at a cafe. They started chatting, and Leela realized how much she missed genuine human connection. She decided to balance her time between her AI friend and rebuilding real relationships. In the end, she learned that while digital companions have their place, nothing compares to the warmth of a real smile.
That's a great reminder, Amelia. AI friends and virtual influencers can be amazing tools, but they can't fully replace human relationships.
Exactly. It's about finding balance and using technology to enhance, not replace, our lives.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for listening to English Podcast Session.
Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts on today's topic. See you next time.
Bye for now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Podcast Session, where we explore fascinating topics and learn something new every episode. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Amelia. Today, we're diving into a serene and enchanting topic: the calm and peaceful nature of winter nights.
Winter nights. There's something magical about them, don't you think?
Absolutely, John. From the quiet streets blanketed in snow to the glittering stars in the clear, frosty sky, winter nights offer a sense of tranquility that's hard to find in other seasons.
So grab a warm drink, settle in, and join us as we reflect on what makes winter nights so special. We'll also have our intermediate vocabulary section and a short story at the end. Let's get started.
Let's start by talking about the ambiance of winter nights. John, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
For me, it's the silence. There's this stillness that's almost surreal. You can walk outside and hear nothing but the crunch of snow under your feet. It's like the world is taking a deep breath.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I love how the snow absorbs sound. It creates a cocoon of quietness. It's perfect for introspection or just enjoying the moment.
And what about the visuals? A winter night often feels like a scene from a painting. The moonlight reflecting on the snow, it's breathtaking.
Oh, definitely. And the stars seem so much brighter on those cold, crisp nights. It's as if they're putting on a show just for us.
True. And let's not forget the warmth of home. A winter night is complete when you're indoors, wrapped in a blanket with a steaming cup of tea or hot chocolate.
Yes, it's the perfect time to slow down, reflect, and find peace. Winter nights remind us to appreciate the simple joys in life.
Speaking of simple joys, Amelia, do you have a favorite memory of a winter night?
I do. One winter night, I went for a walk in the park. It had just snowed, and the trees were covered in frost. The air was so crisp, and there was this incredible sense of calm. I felt like I was the only person in the world.
That sounds magical. I have a similar memory. I remember sitting by the fireplace, reading a book, and hearing the wind outside. It was the perfect combination of coziness and the wild beauty of winter. Let's take a quick break for our intermediate vocabulary section. We'll share some words related to winter nights and explain how to use them in sentences.
Great idea! Our first word is serene. It means calm, peaceful, and untroubled. For example, the serene beauty of the snow-covered hills took my breath away.
Next, we have tranquility. It refers to a state of peace and quiet. Here's an example: the tranquility of the winter night made me feel at ease.
Another useful word is crisp. In this context, it means cool and fresh, usually describing the weather. For instance, the crisp air of the winter evening was invigorating.
Good one. We also have introspection. It's the process of looking inward and reflecting on your thoughts and feelings. Example: winter nights are perfect for introspection.
Lastly, let's talk about enchanting. It means delightfully magical or charming. Example, the enchanting glow of the moonlight on the snow made the night unforgettable.
Try using these words in your daily conversations or writing. They're great for describing not only winter nights, but also other peaceful or magical moments.
All right, let's get back to our discussion.
The beauty of winter nights.
John, we've talked about the ambiance and memories, but what about the connection winter nights have with creativity?
That's a great point. Winter nights often inspire writers, poets, and artists. The quietness and stillness create the perfect atmosphere for creativity to flow.
Exactly. There's something about a snowy landscape or a moonlit night that stirs the imagination. It's no wonder so many great works of art and literature are inspired by winter.
And it's not just about art. Winter nights also encourage meaningful conversations. When you're sitting by the fire with family or friends, you tend to talk about deeper things.
True. It's as if the calmness of the night opens up space for connection. It's a time to slow down and focus on what really matters.
And let's not forget the festive aspect of winter nights. Whether it's Christmas, Hanukkah, or New Year's Eve, winter nights bring people together in celebration.
Absolutely. The lights, the music, the warmth of being with loved ones, it all adds to the magic of the season.
Now, as promised, it's time for a short story. This one captures the essence of a calm winter night.
The story is called The Lantern in the Snow. On a quiet winter night, a young boy named Lucas decided to explore the forest near his home. The snow crunched softly beneath his boots as he carried a small lantern to light his way.
The forest was silent, except for the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. The moon cast a silver glow over the snowy ground, making it look like a world made of diamonds.
As Lucas walked, he felt a deep sense of peace. The world seemed to hold its breath, and for the first time in a long while, so did he. All his worries faded away in the stillness of the night.
Suddenly, he noticed a tiny, flickering light in the distance. Curious, he followed it and discovered a small clearing with an old man sitting by a fire. The man smiled and invited Lucas to sit with him.
They didn't speak much, but the warmth of the fire and the quiet understanding between them made Lucas feel at home. When he finally returned to his house, he realized that the calm of the winter night had given him something priceless, a moment of pure peace.
Beautiful story. It perfectly captures the magic and serenity of winter nights.
I think it's a reminder for all of us to embrace the stillness and beauty that winter brings.
That's all for today's episode of English Podcast Session. We hope you enjoyed our discussion about the calm and peaceful nature of winter nights.
Don't forget to practice the vocabulary we covered today, and maybe even take a quiet walk on a winter night to experience the magic for yourself. Share your thoughts with us about winter nights, what you love about them, and what's your favorite thing to do in cozy winter.
Is it a long peaceful walk or a book inside with hot cup of coffee?
Thanks for tuning in. Stay warm, stay peaceful, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone. Bye for now. Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another episode of English Podcast Session. I'm John.
And I'm Amelia. We're here to explore fascinating topics, learn English, and have a little fun along the way.
Today's topic? Impulsivity and self-control, the tug-of-war within.
We'll be diving into how these personality traits shape our decisions, relationships, and even mental health. So stick with us, it's going to be insightful.
Oh, and don't forget our special vocabulary segment halfway through, and an inspiring short story to wrap things up.
Ready? Let's jump in.
Let's start with impulsivity. Amelia, how would you define it?
I'd say it's acting without thinking. Like making decisions in the heat of the moment. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. Impulsivity is when we react quickly, often without considering the consequences. It can feel exciting, but it's risky.
And self-control, on the other hand, is like the opposite, isn't it? It's the ability to pause, think, and resist urges or temptations.
Exactly. It's about discipline and patience. Think of self-control as the brakes on a car, while impulsivity is the accelerator.
Oh, nice metaphor. So why do you think some people are more impulsive than others?
Great question. Part of it is biology. Did you know the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, develops fully in our mid-20s?
I did. So younger people are more likely to act on impulse because their brains are still developing.
Exactly. And then there's personality. Some people are naturally more spontaneous, while others prefer to plan everything.
Cultural and environmental factors play a role too. For instance, growing up in a chaotic environment might make someone more impulsive.
True. And while impulsivity isn't always bad, it can lead to problems when it's unchecked.
Like overspending, overeating, or saying things you regret in the heat of the moment.
Yes, but self-control can have its downsides too. Being too rigid or cautious might make someone miss out on opportunities.
So it's all about balance. A little bit of both is healthy.
Let's talk relationships. How do you think impulsivity and self-control play a role?
Well, impulsivity can make someone exciting to be around. They're spontaneous and fun.
True, but it can also lead to conflict. Like making rash decisions that affect others.
Or saying hurtful things without thinking. That's why self-control is crucial in relationships. It helps us communicate better and resolve conflicts calmly.
Agreed. And mental health? There's definitely a connection there.
Definitely. Impulsivity is linked to conditions like ADHD and bipolar disorder. It can also lead to risky behaviors like substance abuse.
Self-control, on the other hand, is associated with better mental health outcomes. People with high self-control tend to be less stressed and more successful.
But too much self-control can lead to perfectionism or anxiety. It's a double-edged sword.
That's why understanding these traits and finding balance is so important.
Couldn't agree more. Speaking of balance, should we take a quick break?
Yes. It's time for our vocabulary section. All right, listeners, grab your notebooks. Here are some important words and phrases related to impulsivity and self-control.
First up, impulsive.
It means acting without thinking. For example, she made an impulsive decision to quit her job.
Next, self-restraint.
This refers to controlling your actions or emotions. For example, he showed self-restraint by not arguing back.
Another one, instant gratification.
This is the desire for immediate pleasure or reward. For instance, social media gives us instant gratification with likes and comments.
And here's delayed gratification.
That's the ability to wait for a bigger reward later. Like, saving money requires delayed gratification.
Let's not forget reckless.
It means doing something without thinking about the risks. For example, driving fast in the rain was reckless.
And finally, willpower.
It's the strength to resist temptation. For instance, it takes willpower to stick to a diet.
Got those down? Great. So, John, how do we strike a balance between these two traits?
It's not easy, but it starts with awareness. Knowing when you're being impulsive or overly cautious helps.
True. And mindfulness can help too. Taking a moment to pause before reacting can make a big difference.
I've also heard that setting small, achievable goals can improve self-control.
Yes. And for impulsive people, learning to channel that energy into creative or productive activities can help.
So it's all about using these traits to your advantage, rather than letting them control you.
Absolutely. And speaking of control, are you ready for today's story?
Oh, I've been waiting for this part. Let's hear it.
Once upon a time, there was a farmer named Samuel. One day, he found a bag of seeds labeled magical growth. The instructions read, "Plant these seeds and they will grow instantly. But beware, the plants will wither in a day."
Sounds tempting, but risky.
Exactly. Samuel had two choices. He could plant the magical seeds and enjoy a quick harvest, or wait and plant his regular seeds, which would take weeks to grow but provide a lasting yield.
So, what did he do?
At first, Samuel couldn't resist. He planted the magical seeds. The next day, he had a huge harvest, but by evening, the crops had wilted.
Instant gratification, right there.
Yes. Realizing his mistake, Samuel decided to plant his regular seeds. Though it was hard to wait, the reward was worth it. His patience brought a plentiful harvest that fed his family for months. A perfect example of balancing impulsivity and self-control.
Exactly. Sometimes, the best rewards come to those who wait.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. What a journey!
We explored the highs and lows of impulsivity and self-control, learned some new vocabulary, and heard a thought-provoking story.
Remember, it's all about balance. A little impulsivity keeps life exciting, and self-control keeps us grounded.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with your friends. Hi everyone, and welcome back to English Podcast Session. I'm John.
And I'm Amelia. Thanks for joining us today for an exciting and very relevant topic, Dopamine Nation, the impact of instant gratification on mental health.
That's right, Amelia. Today we're diving into how technology fuels our craving for instant gratification, the challenges it brings, and how it impacts mental health. Plus, we'll explore strategies to overcome these challenges and set long-term goals.
We'll also have a vocabulary section to help you expand your English skills. And, as always, we'll end with a short story that ties everything together.
Let's get started. What is dopamine and instant gratification?
So, John, let's break it down. What exactly is dopamine?
Good question. Dopamine, the feel-good chemical in our brains. Let me explain it to you. Have you ever found yourself checking your phone even when there's no notification?
Guilty. And I'm sure most of our listeners can relate. That's one way technology trains us to crave instant rewards.
Dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain. It plays a huge role in how we feel pleasure. When we do something enjoyable, like eating chocolate or getting likes on social media, our brain releases dopamine.
That's the reward chemical, right? It's what makes us want to repeat those pleasurable activities.
Exactly. And that's where instant gratification comes in. And it feels amazing for a moment. But the problem arises when we start chasing that short-term hit over long-term goals.
It's the desire to experience pleasure right now rather than waiting for long-term rewards.
Like scrolling TikTok instead of finishing a book. Quick, easy, and addictive.
Totally. The problem is this constant craving for instant rewards can disrupt our ability to focus on long-term goals.
Now, let's talk about how technology contributes to this need for instant gratification. Social media, for example.
Oh, absolutely. Social media apps are designed to be addictive. You post a picture and bam, likes and comments flood in. It's like a dopamine hit factory.
And it's not just social media. Think about online shopping. One-click purchases, same-day delivery, it's all about instant gratification. But let's pause for a moment. What does instant gratification really mean?
Great question. Instant gratification is the desire to experience pleasure or fulfillment without delay. It's the opposite of delayed gratification, which requires patience and self-control.
But these conveniences come at a cost. Over time, they can make us less patient and more anxious. It's harder to enjoy slower, meaningful experiences. While instant gratification feels good in the short term, over time it can make it harder to focus, form healthy habits, or achieve long-term goals.
One major impact is the feeling of dissatisfaction. For example, when we're used to getting what we want immediately, we struggle to cope with delays or setbacks in real life.
Another issue is that it can interfere with sleep. For instance, binge-watching a show or scrolling at night disrupts our natural rest cycles.
It's true. Have you noticed how hard it is for people to sit through a long movie without checking their phones?
Guilty as charged. But the constant notifications and rewards condition our brains to expect instant feedback. That's a big challenge for building healthy habits.
And don't forget, it's also linked to procrastination. Why start a tough project when you can get a quick dopamine hit from watching funny cat videos?
So true. But before we go any further, how about we take a quick break for some vocabulary? Shall we? And now, it's time for our vocabulary break. Here are some key words and phrases from today's episode.
First up, dopamine, a chemical in the brain that creates feelings of pleasure and motivation. Example, exercise boosts dopamine levels, making you feel happier.
Next we have instant gratification, the desire for immediate pleasure or reward without delay. Example, ordering food online satisfies our need for instant gratification.
Neurotransmitter. This refers to chemicals in the brain that send signals between nerve cells. For example, dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure.
Another word is disrupt. It means to interrupt or disturb something. For instance, constant notifications can disrupt your concentration.
Procrastination, the act of delaying or postponing tasks. Example, checking your phone instead of studying is a common form of procrastination.
Addiction, a compulsive need for something, even if it's harmful. Example, many people struggle with smartphone addiction today.
Finally, long-term goals. These are objectives you plan to achieve over a longer period. Example, saving money for a house is a long-term goal.
Try using these words in sentences throughout the day. It's a great way to build your English fluency.
And now, back to our topic.
So, Amelia, let's talk about the challenges of living in this dopamine-driven world.
Well, one major challenge is losing focus. With so many distractions, it's hard to stick to tasks that don't offer immediate rewards.
True. For example, studying or exercising requires consistent effort, but there's no instant payoff.
Exactly. Another challenge is how it affects mental health. Over-relying on instant gratification can lead to anxiety, restlessness, and even depression.
It's like a vicious cycle. The more we chase quick fixes, the harder it becomes to enjoy the slower, deeper aspects of life.
So far, we've talked about the problem. But John, how can we overcome the challenges of instant gratification?
Great question. One strategy is to practice delayed gratification. This means consciously waiting for rewards.
That's a great point. One way to do this is by setting small milestones. For example, instead of binge-watching a show, reward yourself with one episode after completing a task.
And building healthy habits is key. Try replacing instant dopamine hits with activities that offer long-term benefits, like exercising or learning something new. Mindfulness can also help. Taking a moment to pause and reflect can break the cycle of impulsive behavior. Being present in the moment reduces the urge to constantly seek external validation.
Another tip: limit your screen time. Apps like Screen Time or Digital Well-being can help you monitor and reduce your usage.
Absolutely. And remember, it's okay to enjoy technology, but in moderation. Awareness is the first step to making positive changes. It's all about finding balance. Technology isn't bad, but we need to use it in ways that support our goals, not distract from them.
And now, we'll wrap up with a short story that highlights today's theme.
Let's do it. This story is called The Two Paths.
Once, there was a young artist named Ashley. She loved to paint but found herself distracted by her phone. Every day, she would sit down to create, only to spend hours scrolling social media. The likes and comments felt rewarding, but her canvases stayed blank.
One day, Ashley met an older artist, Mr. Parker. He told her, "True art takes time. You must be patient and trust the process." Inspired, Ashley decided to limit her phone use. Instead, she focused on painting for 1 hour every day.
At first, it was hard. She missed the instant gratification of her phone. But over time, Ashley's skills improved. Months later, her paintings were displayed in a gallery, and she felt a deeper satisfaction than ever before.
The moral of the story? Sometimes, the best rewards are the ones you have to wait for.
Beautifully said, John.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope you learned something valuable about dopamine, instant gratification, and how to strike a healthy balance.
Don't forget to practice the vocabulary we shared. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to English Podcast Session.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Take care and keep learning.